Think about a match EQ, right? When a match EQ came out, well, it's just an EQ that's taking what's going on in this other thing and applying it automatically. That's an automatic EQ. It's AI EQ, man. It's a car that runs on water. Hey, what's going on? It's Avi from Just Right Music. You may have seen or heard of a bunch of AI updates to Logic Pro or, just kind of the world in general right now. If you're a musically inclined person like myself, you may be thinking, to yourself, well, holy crap, how is this going to affect me? This is going to change music, right? Is this going to replace artists in general? What the heck is going on? Is Logic Pro 11 killing musicianship? Yeah, kinda. Let's stop right there for a second. Editing Avi over here. So let's discuss musicianship. Musicianship is really just the performance skills, the abilities to take musical concepts and apply them to an instrument effectively, right? So you know what you're doing, you know what the concept is, you're able to reproduce it and make it happen in some type of musical way. That's what musicianship is, and that's why this is such a big deal. Cool. All right, back to let's discuss. First thing is, these are just tools, right? And that's what everyone keeps saying. These are just tools. They're just gonna be tool-like and gonna help people with creativity, like us, musicians, people who are creative. Yes, to a degree. I recently put out a video where I dove into Logic Pro 11's new session players, which are basically, AI keyboard, AI bass, and we already had virtual drummer, but now it's like kind of more in depth. It's got a bit of an upgrade. And there's also, AI vocalists out there already that you can just punch lyrics into, and like a very convincing sounding voice will sing beautifully those lyrics right back at you. You put that right into your recording, and boom, you got a mix ready song that's just done. Vocalists stuff just done. There's an accessibility to this, which I think is really key here, right? So up until now, if you wanted to write music, write songs, you had to essentially either use loops, samples from other people's music, or if you didn't do that, you had to actually learn instruments yourself and create the music from scratch, right? So when we don't have that barrier anymore, we can start working on the actual skill of writing music far earlier, far sooner than if we had to sit and come up with these instrumental skills and these performance skills before as a prerequisite to being able to start songwriting and stuff. Now, depending on what you want to write, what kind of music you want to write, you might only need to learn some open chords on guitar or just some like plunked out chords on keyboard to be able to start writing music. And if you want to sing along with your music, then you have to like be able to sing or learn how to sing, afford vocal lessons. So there's a lot here, a lot of baggage in a way that comes with being able to write music and being able to come out with and express yourself, right? So in the sense of being able to get from point A to point B, point A is I'm not writing music at all, and point B is, hey, look at me, I'm writing music. Then these are a great, phenomenal tool. It super speeds that process of not being able to write to being able to write. Now, the tricky part here is, well, are you hearing what the AI is putting out to you? And you're just like, oh yeah, that sounds good. Or are you trying to get the AI person to do what's happening in your head? Now, that is a matter of technical control, right? You go into the actual application, you work in those, with the program and do the parameters, change the complexity, the intensity, and change the pattern, and change which instruments are being hit, all of that stuff. That you can think about as like the prompts, right? Everyone's talking about ChatGPT and AI prompts and everything, and how that's like a new skill all of a sudden overnight. Well, similar here now is the same with these session players, right? Now we have to gain the skill of being able to put in the prompt that matches our ear. In a way, we're still playing as an instrument, right? But the difference is it's even further removed from the physicality of the original instrument, right? Think about keyboards and synths and stuff. Like, you're still using the same black and white keys that people have been using for hundreds of years now. With MIDI, you're very far removed from the actual instrument, right? If you're just plunking it in MIDI in your DAW or in, say, Sibelius or something, you're not anywhere close to the physicality of the instrument, right? So this has already been happening. So this isn't coming out of nowhere at all, right? There are people in the composition world that are like, this is a real thing. These are real people that say this. They say that you're not a real composer unless you can sit and write from your head directly to paper. No piano in front of you, no instrument in front of you whatsoever. None of that. If you can't do that, you're not a, quote, real composer. So, there's always been these people who are gatekeeping, who are, mostly in academia, especially in classical music and stuff, but there are always going to be people who are going to go against the progression of technology. I think that this is really great for songwriters and for composers, and especially for those composers and songwriters who use the computer essentially as an instrument, right? Who are using totally just the DAW or notation software like Sibelius or Dorico or anything like that. I think this is going to be a boon for those kinds of music producers, people who are making beats and electronic music and using sequencing and stuff like that. I think those people are really going to benefit from this. At the same time, it does take away that physicality. So when you take away some of that physicality, you're taking away a kind of the humanness. And there's a number of factors that get involved when we start talking about that. First of all, is it's just bad for delayed gratification, right? So there's a flip side to not be having to build all of the skill, all of the instrumental skills and the musicianship skills. We're not feeling it as much then. The music will seem less intentional when it doesn't come from you as a physical person, right? Because it's now not just about what you can think, it's about what you can enact on your body. The way and the subtle nuances of how you physically play an instrument come across very subtly, right? Subtle nuances. Keep that in mind. This all comes across in the tone, in the phrasing, in all of the things that make music feel organic and can make people move or make people feel emotional, right? So I think these session players are going to make phenomenal background music, but in terms of making music that people are going to want to listen to, people are going to get real emotional responses from, I think that there's still quite a ways to go. And I think it's going to be kind of difficult to use just these AI players to attain that without a human voice involved. I think there's a subtle organic quality when a human has touched the art in some way that presents itself. No matter how good the technology gets, and say like for violin, for example, for like string samples and horn samples and stuff, no matter how good it gets, you're never going to quite be able to replace that human factor, right? No matter how good the AI gets. Note Performer has already been doing this for a while now, and I love Note Performer. As a composer, I love It's AI playback. That's all it is. They have great sounding samples. The phrasing sounds great. Like when my teacher who introduced me to Note Performer, someone sent them like a mix of it or whatever, he was like, "Whoa, did the orchestra be able to rehearse already?" He literally thought it was the orchestra in a rehearsal room. If he was able to say, "Whoa, oh, interesting, cool," that's a huge level, right? And that makes it so that my compositions, I could just focus on composing and writing whatever I want to write, and what comes out at the end is a really beautifully performed, rendition of that input. It's still not quite the same as going and seeing someone live play it. I think these AI session players are going to be really great for particularly demoing and getting ideas out there. But I think that like really solid music making there's still going to be a place for that. There's still going to be a place for musicians, particularly when it comes to live performance. AI is not going to be able to perform live anytime soon outside of pressing play, which is essentially what it is now anyway, right? So if you're just pressing play, how's that different from pressing play on Spotify, right? We're not actually going to see a robot perform music. I've seen a couple of videos from Samurai Guitarist and from Adam Neely and a couple of other people who made really good arguments about that already. So go check those videos out if you're interested in this. Feeling the music, building these instrumental and these musicianship skills, being able to hear the music in your head. These are all interconnected in some way. Knowing how certain musical concepts or ideas feel and sound on your instrument goes a very long way into being able to use tools like this in a high capacity, right? Because you still need to know musically what's happening and what to do or what you want to do in order to make the vision in your ear a reality. That's like the whole thing about writing music. So the less musical and the less music-minded we are, the more technical-minded we are, and the more about the sound we are and about, just kind of putting in inputs and outputs, it becomes more and more difficult ultimately to find music that will move us. And it will be more and more difficult to understand exactly what is happening inside music. That's what's so great still about MIDI. Why MIDI's fine even with virtual instruments, whatever, it doesn't matter because you're still there plucking around with the notes themselves. Whether or not you know what a minor or a major third is, you can tell that it sounds good because you have ears and you live in this society. You know it sounds good, so you're going to use it more. You still have that discovery, that realization, that path. When you take away that path where you just type in lyrics, you're not going to be able to really dial in the performance on the vocals that you might want, right? There might be like a grit setting, like, oh, I want this to be like intenser vocals, more intense vocals, but it's not going to be quite the same. And it's not going to feel the same on your end as a creator if you're relying solely on AI players like this. Watch out for that. These are great tools. This is going to be a fantastic tool. I already am super into it. Like I'm already thinking like, oh, great. I can use this for bass playing. I can use this for drums, which I've already had virtual drummer in part of my workflow process. And as part of a process, as a tool in the process, I think is perhaps the best application of this kind of stuff. Think about AI like you might think about like an equalizer. Back in the day when equalizers were first invented, I could totally see some guitarist somewhere or some guy saying like, what do you mean doing it after the fact? Do you mean taking it, just turn the treble down on the amp or turn the amp slightly so that the way the sound is hitting the microphone changes. That's what EQ used to be. You get the sound correct at the source and that's that. You get the sound you get. Then it moved into, oh, well, you can record it and then you can actually play it again and then change it in post or change it after the fact. I could totally see EQ people going like, hey, excuse me, what? That's cheating. It's the same argument. People are going to think that the current AI session players are just cheating. But the reality is that the cheating that you think that it is really just accessibility for new people to decide whether or not they want music to be something that's really important in their lives. It's that. But what it's not going to be is like real artists, using, that brings me to something I do want to talk about. And this is where things get a little more nefarious because labels are gonna label. Major labels already are just looking for more and more reasons to just gobble up as much money as they can because they're just terrified of the way, they got slammed in the early 2000s when the internet and streaming became a thing. So now they own some of the streaming services, right? Like major labels own, I think, up to 5% or more of Spotify, which means that they are in the back room cutting deals. So there's already nasty, nefarious stuff happening. And what we're already seeing is industry plant basically times a million. These artists aren't even going to be real people anymore. They might not even need real human songwriters anymore. Labels will just start churning out AI-based music over and over and over again with these avatars that are going to basically just like take over pop music. That could totally happen. We're already sort of seeing that to a degree. And I think that may actually be a blessing in disguise. There's still enough of a human element in mainstream and pop music that we get to see everybody. We get to see these humans being humans. But as soon as we stop seeing humans and we start like looking more at video game characters or something, like performing the music, quote unquote, I think then reappreciation of live performance of real musicians recording actual music that they either composed or they're performing, I think that's going to come back in a real way. Very much like vinyl, right? Think about vinyl. Vinyl records have come back in a way that nobody ever could have expected. I used to work at a post-production studio, so I got to see firsthand on the inside a little bit of what that was like. My boss would talk to me. He was like, nobody wanted vinyl. Nobody, like 5 years even before I started working there, nobody wanted vinyl. And suddenly it was a huge explosion and his business transformed because he was one of the only people in the United States that still had like a vintage lathe from the 80s and still cutting records. It's wild. And I think something like that is going to happen with live music, with live musicians, real performers and real performances after we see this influx, this big glut of AI artists, of AI music. It's gonna be weird, and labels have the money, they have the marketing budget, so they're still gonna make money. They wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't going to make them money, right? That's kind of the whole deal. I don't know. Labels are gonna label, they're gonna continue to be awful to musicians as they have been. Music is no longer a singular source of livable income for most musicians, 99% of musicians, and it's almost always going to be music and something else, music and your day job. That's just the reality of how it is, even for the people who are at the top of the industry. That is increasingly becoming the reality. So if you are a musician and you're just like exasperated by all this, don't worry. It's affecting everybody else. You just focus on being you. You focus on expressing yourself the way that you want to and using the tools that are available to you in order to fulfill your vision, because that's why those tools are there. All right? That's the real application for these new tools. Think about a match EQ, right? When a match EQ came out, well, it's just an EQ that's taking what's going on in this other thing and applying it automatically. That's an automatic EQ. It's AI EQ, man. It's a car that runs on water. So, it's always been happening. This is just the next chapter in the conversation, the next talking point, the next piece of technology that's coming up and potentially disrupting stuff. Ultimately, the people who are going to be up in arms about it are going to be up in arms about it. The people who are going to take the tool and use it and apply it in a way that gives them more freedom, more time, more creativity, those people are going to be the best use case, as well as the people who are going to be the happiest, right? Because that's ultimately where we want these tools to lead us, to a source of happiness, to a place of greater happiness. Oh boy, it's gonna be tricky. Things are changing. This could be like revenge of the labels, right? Labels are now just cutting artists out of the picture entirely. They're all AI avatars, AI-based music, no more songwriters, right? But that's okay, honestly. They can do whatever they want because there's enough infrastructure with the internet and technology now for all of us to be able to do our own thing and for people to find us doing that thing. You, me, right here, right now. It's about you as an artist now. It isn't about the label behind you. It isn't about what marketing you're able to do. It's about you. It's about your expression and your music and who you're able to reach out to and touch with your music. That right there is never, ever going to change. An AI can't come up out of nowhere, pick up your acoustic guitar in your living room and just start playing. It cannot do that. There's not ever going to be a replacement for humans coming together and playing or singing or doing music together in some way. So did Apple kill, musicianship? Did Logic Pro 11 session players kill musicianship? No, not entirely, but it did deal it a little bit of a blow. And this is going to be part of the battle, part of the conversation as we continue to move through this new chapter. Let me know what your thoughts are about these AI session players and Logic, about the greater artificial intelligence landscape, where you think things are going to go, whether or not it's time to just start preparing for the apocalypse, or maybe things are going to be more of the same and maybe a little bit harder and a little bit easier in ways that we don't expect. If you liked what you saw, throw a like, throw a subscribe. I've got some free resources down in the doobly-doo for you, whether or not you are a songwriter, you're a composer, or you're a rock and metal guitarist. All of you, you're all my kin, so I try and take care of all of you. I got some stuff down there for you if you're interested. Crazy, right? What a world we're living in now. I'll see you next time. Peace out.